guidelines from the White House designed to slow the rapid spread of coronavirus by asking nearly every American to stay home from work or school for the next 15 days. In almost every aspect of daily life, America is closed for business. And today, Wall Street took a beating. The Dow fell about 3,000 points, its largest one-day point drop in history. And tonight, America's streets are empty. From New York City to Los Angeles, bars and restaurants have been told to close or only serve takeout. The president admitting late today the country may be headed into a recession as businesses are forced to lay off millions of workers. And the World Health Organization said there is still not enough testing being done. And some governors say they don't have enough hospital beds. There is a lot of important information to report as we come on the air tonight, and our correspondents are covering it all. Ben Tracy is going to lead us off tonight from the White House. And Ben, the president says these next 2 weeks are critical.
That's right, and this was a very different President Trump today. Gone was the leader who said the virus will pass and everyone should just relax. Today the president had stern warnings for all Americans.
This is something that's an invisible enemy.
A more somber President Trump said the coronavirus could last through July or August and cause a recession.
We've made the decision to further toughen the guidelines and blunt the infection now. We'd much rather be ahead of the curve than behind it.
The new CDC guidelines say for the next 15 days, all Americans should stay home from work and school, avoid social gatherings of more than 10 people, and eating and drinking at bars, restaurants, and food courts. But these are recommendations, not requirements. Are you telling governors in those states then to close all their restaurants?
Well, we haven't said that yet. We're recommending, but we're recommending things. No, we haven't gone to that step yet. That could happen, but we haven't gone there yet.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says the White House needs to be more clear.
This is a national problem, and we need federal leadership.
On a call with the nation's governors today, President Trump told them to find critical supplies of respirators and masks on their own because federal help may be too slow. The president has also said that he takes no responsibility for the slow rollout of testing kits around the country. Asked today to rate his performance of handling this crisis, he gave himself a 10. Nora?
Ben, thank you. Joining us now is Dr. Deborah Birx. She serves as the White House Coronavirus Response Coordinator. This is her first interview since the outbreak began. Doctor, so good to have you. Are these guidelines getting us closer to what would amount to a national or a nationwide quarantine?
So these guidelines that we came out with today are very much based on models. So we've looked very carefully at what actually works. What can you layer together to have the biggest impact? This is a virus. We can conquer this, but it will be strictly on the basis of our behaviors and what we do.
Why 15 days? What do you think will happen if everyone follows these guidelines? Could we stop it?
We can level it out. This is a roadmap to prevent your grandmother from getting sick. It is a roadmap to prevent your grandmother from having to be hospitalized or your grandfather. This is a roadmap of what everyone can do today to really protect the people who've been on cancer treatments, to really ensure that they can survive through this epidemic.
What happens if people don't follow these guidelines?
Well, we can see an example of that. You know, Italy was slow to introduce these guidelines today. If you're not uncomfortable, if you're not really putting together and asking for sacrifice, you're going to get behind the virus. And if you get behind a pandemic, this virus is about 2 to 3 times more contagious than flu. And so that's why we want everybody to do everything that they can. We know that we have a large group of millennials between 25 and almost 40. They are really key to this. They're a social group. So that no more than 10 is very much focused on them to really say, even if you're home, don't have gatherings more than 10.
As you know, there are a large number of cases in New York. The governor of New York said today, I don't believe we're going to be able to flatten the curve enough. Do you agree with that?
We can flatten the curve even in New York, but the amount of behavioral change that it's going to take every American to sacrifice for one another.
You see all the numbers. What's your biggest concern?
My biggest concern is that Americans everywhere will think that they're okay, they're not at risk, and they won't follow these guidelines. And what we know is even if you perceive that you're not at risk, you put others at risk by not following these.
Dr. Birx, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
There are now more than 4,300 cases confirmed, with more than 80 deaths. Mola Lenghi joins us from New York's Grand Central Terminal, which is much quieter than usual tonight. Mola?
Well, yeah, Nora, typically Grand Central would be bustling right now for the rush hour commute. As you can see, it is not. This is nowhere near the level it normally is, illustrating just how those closings, cancellations, and social distancing is really bringing American life to a standstill. Tonight, a nation on lockdown. Businesses shuttered and streets empty, all in an attempt to slow coronavirus's spread. Today, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut announced a coordinated social life shutdown. More than 30 million without access to theaters. Restaurants and bars will only be open for takeout and delivery. But New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo is calling for federal leadership.
Rather than having a scramble of every local government, state government, trying to figure it out on its own.
David Honor is the owner of Fred's Restaurant in Manhattan.
We've been here 23 years, and I've had people that have worked with me for 23 years. And the longer it's closed, people are going to probably leave the city.
School closures are affecting more than 35 million students in at least 35 states. Closed schools in cities, including New York and Houston, handed out free meals to children now spending their days at home. Public schools in Los Angeles also closed their doors today. The nation's second largest school district serves 600,000 students. 80% of them live below the poverty line, and 30,000 are homeless. Grab-and-go meal sites won't be open until Wednesday. LA Superintendent Austin Buettner.
We want to do it right. We want to prepare carefully, make sure everyone involved is safe, and that's taking a little bit of time to prepare for.
And San Francisco just announced a state of emergency, allowing people to only go grocery shopping. And tonight, coronavirus testing is ramping up across the country, more than 38,000 so far. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top infectious disease expert, endorsed the need for mass isolations.
The best way to address it would to be doing something that looks like it might be an overreaction. It isn't an overreaction.
As you can imagine, still a ways away from returning to normal. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio says he hopes to open up the school districts, reopen them by April 20th here in New York City, but he cautioned they could remain closed for the rest of the academic year, Nora.
That is a frightening scenario for many parents, Mola. Thank you. Today, financial markets suffered historic losses. The Dow falling almost 3,000 points. That is the biggest one-day point drop of all time. Jill Schlesinger tonight is outside NASDAQ headquarters in New York. And Jill, it's just been a stunning day.
Absolutely. Reminds me when I was a young trader in 1987, that crash day when the market was down 22%. Today, the second worst percentage loss, 13%. And it was only a month ago when the markets and the economy seemed to be chugging along. Since then, we've slammed on the brakes, gone into a skid, and who knows, maybe we're going to find ourselves in a ditch. If there's one thing investors hate, it's doubt. And right now, with coronavirus, even traders are being checked on Wall Street, where there is as much uncertainty as there is on Main Street. Sadly, one thing is for sure, the economy will slow to a crawl, which could lead to job losses in the millions. Already, actor Ethan Niven has no income because his LA theater company has gone dark.
Don't want to say like we're starting to panic, but we are starting to worry.
Ukraine. Michelle Clark is a single mother in Illinois who had 2 restaurant jobs. Today, she has no work at all.
I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent.
The Fed has stepped in to keep funds flowing, but coronavirus adds a new twist, says economist Diane Swamp.
There's just no way companies could plan for this full stop in activity.
Congress is trying to come to the rescue, but with the president saying we may be sliding into a recession, there's not a lot of time left for both the nation's small businesses, which employ about 60 million people, and lower wage, non-government workers.
We need people to have their wages covered. We need paid sick leave. That's why it's so critically important that we get cash in individuals' hands so that they don't lose everything.
There's no way to fully prevent hardship. We just hope that there is help for everyday workers as soon as possible. Nora?
I know, that is the biggest race to respond.
You now have this influx you can't handle. You overwhelm the hospitals. You have people on gurneys in hallways. That is what is going to happen now if we do nothing.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is sounding the alarm. We could see scenes like this from hospitals in Italy unfolding here in the U.S.
Our hospitals are not prepared.
Bonnie Castillo is Executive Director of National Nurses United. She says the biggest problem right now is a lack of medical supplies. Nurses and doctors are already getting sick.
Yes, that's true, and more will. And as more get sick and have exposure, we get sidelined. And then who's there to take care of the patients?
To get through the outbreak, it's estimated medical workers will need 3.5 billion N95 medical masks. Currently, there's a national stockpile of only 12 million. Depending on the severity of the outbreak, 200,000 to 2.9 million intensive care beds could be needed. Right now, there are fewer than 65,000 ICU beds available in the entire country. The shortages are already causing some doctors to change the way they treat patients.
I'm rapidly attempting to convert my practice from an in-house practice to answering patients' concerns.
The mere fact that they got statistics of how many beds they're going to need, how many masks they're going to need, and knowing that they can't get as much of these things is letting you know how many people are going to fucking die. You hear what I'm telling you? Use your common sense. And this vaccine here can do more harm than good. This can do more harm than good. The mere fact that they got all this numbers total up already is showing you a lot of people are going to die because the supply cannot meet the demand.
This is the part up here that latches on to your lung cells.
Dr. Kayvon Montjarrett is a director at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research.
This is obviously magnified. What is the actual size of this? About 20,000 of these could fit on the side, on the head of a pin.
He's testing a potential vaccine that would block the virus from attaching itself to your lung.
If it can't get into your lung cells, it can't cause the disease.
The race for a coronavirus vaccine will take 12 to 18 months to run.
You hear that?
So Lieutenant Colonel Mara Kretschmann-Dietrich is working on a drug that people who already have the disease can take.
What we're aiming to develop here is an antiviral treatment that will kill the virus and actually cure them of the disease so that they don't further spread it to the rest of the community.
She says an existing drug used against Ebola may work against the coronavirus as well.
It's ready for clinical trials in humans, and once those clinical trials show that it's effective, then it will be available for wider use in humans, yes.
It hasn't yet been proved effective, but could be used as an emergency treatment. David Martin, CBS News, Walter Reed Army Institute of Research.
And there is still much more news ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, Living with the Coronavirus. Seth Doan's very personal story, including the symptoms that convinced him that he needed to be tested. Plus his wife, Rita Wilson. And later, in the worst of times,